Discussion, it's the heart of the matter. Serving up opinions on a silver platter. It's a grind. The information getting, bringing your guy so hot you'll be sweating. These two dudes with attitudes will put you in the mood for a plate full of brain food. So don't delay, my daughter, my son. Visit the buffet called Promoter 101.
Welcome back to the Promoter 101 podcast. It's episode 236, or as the reboot calls it, number 7. How you feeling about the reboot, Luke?
Feeling so far so good, Dan. You feeling like once a month is enough for everybody in the world?
You know, I've been getting chatter that we need to do a little bit more, but for the moment it seems like it's a pretty busy world, and we're doing about as much as we can right now.
With the holidays coming up, maybe we drop something special, you know?
Ooh, an Easter egg. I like it. And now that you said it out loud, now we have to go create it. So I guess we're doing something in the holidays, which we absolutely don't have a plan for, but you said it, so now we'll do it.
Well, if you're excited about the future, let me put you in the present here. We've got a great interview on this podcast. On episode 236 of Promoter 101, we're going to be joined by the Boch Center's VP of Booking and Event Marketing. That's the Wang Theater and the Shubert Theater in Boston, Massachusetts. Joining us later will be Brian Gale.
We'll also break down the best live music touring conferences in the world. We're going to do them all. Well, mostly America and Canada and a little bit of England. But, you know, we're going to call it the world.
Let's do it. Strap in. Episode 236 of Promoter 101 starts right now.
They don't mind coming to work, but that 8-hour wait to go home is a bitch. Steiny and Luke in the morning on Promoter 101.
We have a bunch of past Promoter 101 episodes available for your entertainment at your leisure. You can listen anytime you want to any of the back catalog at promoter101.com.
Feel free to hit us up with your ideas and questions at Steiny at promoter101.net.
And of course, we're all over the internet. That's where the real conversation's happening. On X, the show is at Promoter 101. I'm at W. Luke Pierce. Dan's at The Jew. Over on Instagram and Threads, the show is at Steiny Promoter 101. Dan is at Dan Presents, and I'm keeping it real with at W. Luke Pierce.
Luke, do you think X is just a dead vehicle at this point? Has it become the Friendster of social media?
I mean, not if you like Nazis and porn, Dan. It's like a great place to be right now for those things.
Well, as a lifelong Jew, I have a feeling of the Nazis.
How about porn?
I have a feeling of porn, too.
The bastion of free speech that is X, Dan. There's a lot of conversation happening. People really want to know what your opinions are.
Well, luckily they've tuned in, and we're going to just give them a humdinger of those today. Shall we, Luke? Shall we?
Let's do it.
Steiny and Luke would like to remind you that a clean desk is a sign of a cluttered desk drawer. Promoter 101.
News of the week. Luke Pierce, what do you got? What's going on out there in the world of entertainment?
It's been a busy month, Dan. A lot of things happening here as we're recording this podcast. We've got all sorts of things to talk about, from industry earnings to bombshell news to happy stats and recorded music. So let's just get into it. We're going to kick things off with an update on the Ticketmaster and FTC lawsuit against Live Nation and Ticketmaster. We've been covering this for a few episodes now, but this week, as we're recording the podcast, the narrative took a little bit of a sharp turn with a formal response from Live Nation. In a letter sent to Senators Marsha Blackburn, the future governor of Tennessee, and Republican senator from Tennessee presently, Ben Ray Lujan, and Live Nation's EVP of Corporate and Regulatory Affairs, Dan Wall, who flatly denies the FTC's claim that Ticketmaster colluded with scalpers or profited from bot-driven sales abuse. So let's break down this letter. First, in the letter, Live Nation categorically denies the core allegation that it knowingly enabled ticket brokers to buy in bulk, resell on its platform, and collect triple fees. In the letter, Wall writes, that makes no economic sense, claiming that ticket resales account for just 3% of Live Nation's total revenue. Live Nation also claims they're not in violation of the Bots Act because, as their argument goes, the law bans automated ticket buying, but not the practice of brokers creating multiple manual accounts. It's certainly a technicality, but one they're seemingly leaning into. And here's where things really get interesting in this letter. Even while denying all their wrongdoing, Ticketmaster is now proactively changing its platform. Big changes include banning multiple accounts per reseller or user, verified by a unique tax ID or social security number, deploying AI to detect fake accounts and duplicate signups, removing trade desk concert ticketing features, which brokers have used to manage and flip large inventories. And finally, they added a post-on-sale sweep tools for artists to identify and cancel suspicious purchases. That's the quiet headline. Ticketmaster just isn't fighting the case. It's restructuring its tools in response to this lawsuit. They're also reiterating their support for the Main Event Ticketing Act, a bill which would toughen bot reporting and create a consumer-compliant database. But here's the kicker. Live Nation claims that it blocks 99% of the 25 million daily sign-up attempts on its platform, and that over the past 10 years, it's spent more than $1 billion on bot mitigation. That's a staggering figure and a little bit of a subtle message that says, we're not the problem, but this system is under siege. So where does it leave us? Live Nation is simultaneously defending its actions and reforming its platform, a classic legal PR strategy. They're trying to disarm regulators with reform before any ruling hits the books. But fans and policymakers alike might be asking, if there's nothing wrong, what are you doing fixing it? Dan, this one's far from over. Whatever happens next might define some of the architecture of digital ticketing in the next 10 years. We'll certainly pay attention to it here on Promoter 101.
I don't really talk about this much, but I do want to say Ticketmaster gets kicked in the teeth quite a bit for all that happens in the world. But I think David Marcus and his team are constantly on the cutting edge of designing the next thing to combat security, whether it's the bots, the resellers, the hackers, all of that. They're constantly ahead of everyone on bringing the tech to the fans to make that experience as safe and clean as possible. And I think they don't get enough credit for being out there first and trying to make verified fan and trying to make this process really as seamless for the fan as possible to make sure those tickets get in the hands of the true fans and not in the resellers. And I think they've really led the way in this process. And I think their response definitely outlines a lot of that they're here and they're doing, not only they're doing it before anyone else is. And they're creating a lot of these processes. And there's something to be said for moving the ticket forward and the security forward and the investment that they've made.
I don't disagree, Dan. Of course, they could have done this all preemptively before the FTC brought a lawsuit against Live Nation if they were really concerned about consumer behavior here. But that's neither here nor there. Whatever brought us to this place is certainly prompting a bunch of changes systematically within Ticketmaster. It's certainly bringing about a bunch of changes in the larger ticket industry in general, because Ticketmaster is such a large share of things.
It kind of feels like a cheap shot to me, Luke. It's just like there's a million things that can be done everywhere. You can't improve everything simultaneously because you're working on the car as you're driving down the street. It's a live, breathing thing, and they're constantly recognizing that things can be improved, and they are. But it's an investment thing that has to happen while the machine is running because it never stops.
I don't think it's a cheap shot at all, Dan, because we've been talking about the resellers. We've been talking about bots for, half a decade now. It's not something that's brand new that just came up this year, that came about instantly under this. This is under the scrutiny of a Justice Department here that's prompting a lot of these things. So I don't think it's fair also to say...
You're talking about inventing technology that doesn't exist, coding it, figuring out what it is. Well, the market of resellers constantly adjust to the adjustments because the scalpers, the brokers, are fucking smart as hell. They're great entrepreneurs that constantly figure out, as we answer their questions, how to change it to the next level. So it's a back and forth war that constantly has to be changed because as you have an answer, they figure out another answer and it's a back and forth volley. So to say they should have seen it coming, yeah, whatever they figure out, the scalpers and brokers are going to figure out a way around, and then they're going to have to figure out a way to combat that. It's a constant game of back and forth that you can't solve. It has to be played out because technology keeps improving.
I'll give them credit for spending $1 billion on bot mitigation over the last several years. Sure, that's a remarkable feat, and it's certainly an investment in consumer-friendly practices. But there's a lot of stuff here that they could have pushed forward earlier without the prompting of some sort of lawsuit here.
If you have a crystal ball, yeah, but you got to pick what you're going to work on in any given day. It's the same thing of what venue you challenge first when you're seventh hold everywhere. You got to start somewhere. You can't start simultaneously everywhere at the same time. It's a domino effect. You got to pick a place and work through it, and eventually you get to all of it. It's a changing market, but you can't fix everything simultaneously.
Well, we'll certainly see where this leads us, Dan. It's certainly an interesting thing that I'm sure we're going to be paying attention to. It's part of a much larger story. It's a first response from Ticketmaster and Live Nation. I certainly applaud them for at least making these things and prompting of these things. So, not entirely a knock on my end of things, but I think it's a criticism that needs well answered at this point, regardless of whether or not the DOJ is in front of them. Let's talk about some recorded music stuff here, touching on another side of the business here that's in the middle of reporting mid-year figures and terms. There's been something quietly brewing under the surface here. The RIAA just released a report this past week alongside Illuminate Intelligence that suggested that the recorded music industry may be approaching its streaming ceiling in the United States and other major markets. The headlines are, paid subscriptions are still growing, but not in the way that they used to in the first 12 to 15 years of streaming. In 2023 and 2024, Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music were still onboarding millions of new users. But in 2025, or at least the first half of it, that growth line is flattening, especially in the US, Canada, and the UK. What's changed? Well, a few things. First, subscription prices have gone up. Spotify just raised rates again, and Apple and Amazon are set to follow suit. And while the average revenue per user, ARPU, is up, user acquisition is slowing down. It's not that people are canceling en masse. It's that the services have simply may have maxed out their reachable audience in some of these developed markets. Everybody who's going to pay for streaming probably already is. But here's the catch. Despite that slowdown, the recorded music industry is still posting record revenues, with U.S. mid-year revenues hitting $5.6 billion per the RIAA. So how can revenue go up while growth is slowing? Well, it's just a pivot in where the growth is coming from. Luminate's data suggests that emerging markets, like think Indonesia, India, Brazil, Nigeria, are picking up steam. Local platforms like Boomplay in Africa or JioSaavn in India are onboarding massive user bases, often on a freemium or ad-supported tiers. And their economics are a little bit different. It's a lower spend per user, but the scale in some of those hugely populated markets is undeniable. At the same time, we're seeing global platforms customizing for local languages, tastes, and payment systems, which is fueling an expansion in territories previously overlooked by some of the major DSPs like Spotify, Apple, and Amazon. So what does it all mean for the broader ecosystem? I think it's a tale of two models. First, you've got your mature markets that are all about increasing price and maximizing revenue per user value. Think about bundling video, exclusive features, AI playlists, squeezing whatever little juice is left from the same orange. And then you've got emerging markets, which are all about scale and reach. That's onboarding the next billion listeners, even if they spend less per month. The net result is a recorded music industry that's still growing, but the business model's evolving and increasingly split across geographies. So here's the big question. Can global growth offset the looming revenue plateau that we're experiencing in the West in these developed markets? How will artists and rights holders adapt when the economics shift from $10 a month for a subscriber in New York to 80 cents per month with ad-supported listeners in Mumbai? The race is on to find out, Dan.
I think you also have to acknowledge that at a certain point, you've already converted most of the congregation over.
Sure.
We're all there. I can't remember the last time I listened to radio. I get it all on streaming now, whether it's Sirius or it's Spotify. I'm getting my music there, and I think everybody else is too. I can't remember the last time I had a water cooler moment where we said, did you hear the morning show? It's a way of the past, right? So everybody's already moved over. If you've already converted everyone, of course it's going to slow down.
Yeah, of course.
But we're all listening to our music, and we're probably listening to more of it than we ever have because of what streaming has done.
And I think that'll lead to more pressure, more change around things like artist-centric payouts and models right now, right? Spotify, Apple, Amazon, YouTube, all giant pools divided up proportionally by a recorded music group. Not necessarily like if I'm an artist or I'm a fan paying $14.99 a month to Spotify and I only listen to one band, that $14.99 is still divvied up across all the bands, all the rights holders participating both on the master and pub side of things and divvied up accordingly. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure to move to artist-centric payouts in the next decade as we see this kind of super fan engagement, as you see platforms build these tools for super fans. It's going to be more of that pressure, which I think may quiet some of these concerns from artists who have objections to the way things are getting paid out right now, but still doesn't really necessarily address the slowing growth rate of recorded music across the globe. I think there's simply a problem that music is too cheap, right? 20 years ago, I was probably spending in the neighborhood of like 15 to 30 bucks a week buying CDs, 1 or 2 CDs a week. 360 bucks a year, I'm spending half of that to listen to every song ever released ever. And I think that's just simply too cheap, right? So we have to find out where the max price is in these developed markets. We have to figure out how to engage and penetrate and create paid users from free users in these developing markets. And hopefully that'll bring us to a place where music has reached its true value, which is, I think, in this case, still in 2025, still undervalued. Last one here, Dan. That time of year where we're getting reports from Wall Street, earnings seasons abound. Some interesting figures coming out here, and I thought I'd just share a couple ones about a couple macro trends here. You know, we talked a little bit about subscription plateaus here, but there's maybe a quieter story that's just as critical playing out in the platform trenches. 2 platforms, I want to call it this week, that are definitely having a moment: Bandsintown and Instagram. Start with Bandsintown. I'm sure many listeners of this podcast are very familiar with the Artist-Fan Connection platform. They just announced that they surpassed 100 million users, with nearly 1 million artists actively using the service to communicate tour dates, ticket links, and fan updates. That's not just big, that's really essential infrastructure. What used to kind of be this indie-bent tool for local discovery has really scaled itself into a global engine, and I've been watching and staying in touch with Fabrice, their CEO, as he helps fans track their favorite artists across multiple cities and continents. They've got real-time data tools and integrations with Spotify, Apple Music, and now populating for tour dates on Google's Gemini have made it a core part of modern tour marketing. But here's what's interesting. Bandsintown isn't really trying to be the next Ticketmaster. Instead, they're kind of quietly owning the space between music and the transaction, where discovery happens, and that's where intention gets built. Dan, are you using Bandsintown for marketing on your tour dates?
Honestly, I couldn't tell you what marketing is doing on a day-to-day basis. I know that TikTok has become a much bigger part of our algorithm internally, like moving away from Facebook, and not completely, but finding that adults have moved over to TikTok as well, not just the younger upcomings, but you're finding Generation X and millennials are there in a heavy drove, and we're seeing the data just really come alive in that space. So I can tell you that, but I couldn't tell you what's going on in Bandsintown.
Are you a Bandsintown user as a fan of music at all? You ever use it all in connection to Spotify? Or they're powering YouTube tour dates or powering Gemini tour dates? Any of that?
I'm not. I tend to go to the band site when I want to know what they're doing. And I'm very quick to start with the artist site, make sure that I'm getting the data directly from where the artist is at. The most common website I use is the Emporium Presents website to grab the data for our own shows. I feel if no one in the public ever uses it, I use it enough for the investment to be worthwhile.
Well, I'm certainly you're driving a lot of traffic to EmporiumPresents.com by yourself, but I'm sure you're also probably noticing that some artist websites are actually powered by Bandsintown. A lot of people use their widgets to power tour dates and provide those information. So whether you may not directly be using Bandsintown, I know many artists use the Bandsintown widget as a means to power the tour dates on their website as well, too.
I'm always surprised at the number of acts that use their Facebook page as if it's a website.
Yeah, it's not great for a lot of things if that's your primary use for it.
It's a disappointing thing for me when I see it, because I want to see a band that's made the investment in themselves and not just gone with the cheapest possible way to do it.
Yeah. Well, contrary to what you were just saying about TikTok, Dan, I want to talk a little bit about Instagram, which I know is a platform that a lot of marketers have moved some of their media spends a little bit away from meta platforms towards other short form things, whether it be YouTube Shorts or TikTok. But Instagram's got it's still a powerhouse, obviously, in the business. Even though TikTok might be grabbing more headlines these days, Meta's platform continues to outperform in music-driven commerce and fan loyalty. Luminate's recent report, as I highlighted earlier, has data that shows that TikTok leads in discovery, but Instagram leads in conversion. So that means fans might hear a song on TikTok, they might like it, but when they follow an artist on Instagram, they're more likely to buy tickets, merchandise, or join a campaign like Patreon or Coffee. Add that to the growing effectiveness of Instagram Reels, stories, and broadcast channels. You've got a platform that's still highly relevant, especially in Western markets where TikTok's user growth has plateaued. Taken together, I think it signals a shift on how we define platform success in the music business. Maybe not just a longer about this is the new hot thing, it's about the repeatable value. Platforms that serve the long game of the artists and most importantly, convert, right? sell a ticket, sell a t-shirt, sell a subscription. So a ton of people are chasing AI-generated playlists and TikTok virality. The winners might be the ones using the tools more quietly that move fans from scroll to sale. And I think that's where Instagram is winning this argument right now. It's definitely a space worth watching, certainly something that digital marketers of both live entertainment and recorded music are paying attention. From the platforms that know how to connect, convert, and compound, they're the ones that are going to win in the long run, Dan.
I don't disagree. I find Instagram to be a monster place for content, and I use it quite often, and we use it for the podcasts, and we definitely use it to promote shows. But it definitely seems like there has been, well, it's still used quite a bit. People are finding their content in different places, and that's constantly going to be one of those things where what's the cool hip place to be? What's the big place to be? And I think people are always looking for the newer place to be, and that's why maybe X isn't what it was 7 years ago.
Yeah.
I still have my Friendster account, though, because I'm hoping it's going to be cyclical.
That may be one thing, unlike fashion, that does come back around. I don't think we're going to see Friendster anytime soon again, Dan.
Well, that's too bad, because I love my MySpace account. I love my Friendster account. Before we head away from the news, I do want to mention that we saw the Crocodile close their two smaller venues in Seattle. Not their big room, their 750 cap, but their smaller 100 cap and their like 300 cap room, and they laid off some of the staff. And I think, this is a bad thing because they've been super aggressive and helpful to the scene in Seattle, a market, and a very cool room with the right size rooms for the market. But it's showing what we're hearing across the board. Ticket sales aren't what they've been, and we're seeing club business running at a loss in a lot of cases. And it's a hard moment out there for the club business. It's never been tougher. And I think if ever, we really need to take action to make sure that those clubs survive so we have a place to build artists in the future. The scene needs those venues. I don't think this is a issue for Seattle. I think this is an issue for the entire country, if not all of US and Canada, if not globally.
No doubt, Dan. I mean, this is something we touched on last month and something I heard a lot from, NEVA conference in June to AIBA in October. Indie promoters, indie venues, they're on the squeeze right now, right? I don't think this is the last of these stories that we're going to be seeing here. And especially concerning to me is considering how, pretty well moneyed the Croc ownership was and prominent in their scene, not just in promoting, shows in their own rooms, but shows outside those rooms as well, too. I'm wondering and I'm hopeful that they're just searching for another tenant for those small rooms. It seems super valuable. Keep it all together for one place, for booking, for development, for artists coming through the Seattle scene, and to see something so storied as the Croc hit the financial straits during a tough time here is really, a concerning and flagging indicator for where the market is right now.
Yeah, maybe we can get Hunter to come on next month and give us an update on what's exactly going on there. And I want to be very clear, the main room is still open, still doing shows, but I think they're an amazing venue and an amazing staff. And I think it's just a sign of what's going on across the industry. And we keep hearing things are tougher and tougher, and we're seeing it and we're feeling it. And that's going to lead to more venues closing. And I think that's not healthy for the scene in any way, shape, or form.
Certainly our thoughts to all of our friends in Madame Lou's and the smaller rooms affected by this. Hopefully we'll get Hunter on here and talk a little bit about this on an upcoming episode of Promoter 101.
They intend to live forever. So far, so good. Steiny and Luke in the morning on Promoter 101.
Of course, it's not an episode of Promoter 101 without some tweets of the month from the mind of Mr. Dan Steinberg. He's at the Jew on X. Dan, let's start here. When an artist team doesn't understand their own audience, but you need to be supportive.
Feels like the whole job some days, Luke.
Feels very personal, Dan.
That wasn't based at you, I promise.
Okay. I understand the audience.
Although I suddenly understand why you said that.
Yeah.
That's not what I was thinking when I wrote that one. But there's definitely some parallels.
Yes. How about this one, Dan? Many companies have a publicist.
Just something to think about.
Are you talking about artist teams? Or are you talking about...
It's weird when a management firm has their own publicist or a building. I don't know. Sometimes it seems very interesting why these people would need publicists. If they just do their job, put their head down, good things will happen, right? Do we really need to be spending all that? And apparently we do. And I wonder if we pay for that in the price somewhere down the line.
What is in that house nut, Dan? You want to break that out for us?
I would love to, but they're not my house nuts. I don't run any venues.
That's a promoter answer right there for you folks. How about this one? It's a little pertinent to what we're about to talk about in this podcast. The start of the live music conference season starts with AIBA. Travel light and drink lots of water.
Always good advice for any bar action you're at. Make sure you get that water in, otherwise in the morning you'll hate yourself more and more. Water is our friend, Luke.
Yes, it is. As are fried bologna sandwiches at Robert's Western World at 2:30 in the morning, Dan.
Chow chow. Chow chow. Gotta have chow chow.
Where's Bobby Cud?
You beat me to it. I was thinking Bobby Cud as soon as I said chow chow.
That'll do it for Tweets of the Month. Make sure you follow Dan for more gems. He's at the Jew on X.
Now, their opinions may have changed, but not the fact that they're always right. Huh? Steiny and Luke in the morning on Promoter 101.
We are thrilled to be joined on episode 236 of Promoter 101 by the Boch Center's VP of Booking and Live Entertainment, Mr. Brian Gale.
Brian Gale's here to talk about the great success they're having between the Wang and the Shubert.
Yeah, it's an honor.
Not only do you have a deep history in Boston running venues, you've got a long history in the business, and everybody that plays the game on any veteran level at all has had some running with you on one level or nothing, because everybody's got a good Brian Gale story. And you normally have a pretty good story about someone in the industry if we drop a name. I mean, that seems like that'd be a fun game to play with you. It's like I could mention BOC. I bet you'd have 10 great stories for me.
We were at the Kentucky Derby last year. I think it was his first, if I remember, his first time at the Derby. You can ask him how much he won after that weekend, which was very impressive. And I was crying in my beer. He was running around. Woo!
And you also have a connection to the Derby as your wife is involved with the ticketing through Ticketmaster with them, right?
Yeah, my wife has been with Ticketmaster 29 years, and she oversees horse racing for Ticketmaster. So Belmont and the Derby and anything that comes along like that. So yeah, she's an expert in horse racing. So she teaches me how to bet, which hasn't been going well, so I should be upset, but part of the game.
It's all part of the fun, right? It's going to make it that much sweeter when you finally win.
Oh, God.
Let's go ahead and let's go way back. Let's talk about how you found your way to the industry. Where'd you graduate college?
The University of South Dakota. I'm sure you were waiting for a big name after University of. Yeah, South Dakota. Born and raised in Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
And what'd you get your degree in?
It was marketing and communications with a minor in advertising at the time because I didn't know what the hell I really wanted to do. But I was doing that. And at the same time, in 1989, when I was going to my first year of college, I got offered a job as a t-shirt security guard at the Sioux Falls Arena, something to make a little extra cash. And the guy who was running security at the time worked with my mom at Sears, okay? And he's like, man, I just need a warm body to stand on the corner of the basketball court tonight. Can you come down and fill out the paperwork and go stand on the corner, make sure no one rushes the court? We had a CBA basketball team, the Sioux Falls Skyforce. So if you kind of go back, like, how did you get in this business, or what was your first job in this business? I was a t-shirt security guard in 1989 at the Sioux Falls Arena, doing basketball, and concerts were just getting a lot bigger around that time, and we were getting more shows. It was run by Ogden Entertainment at the time, back when Ogden was around, if you remember Ogden.
I am old enough to know that name.
So I started, and I kind of just fell in love with working events, whether it was a sporting event or a concert or a home show or a tractor pull, whatever the hell it was at the time. I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. And I was able to do it on weekends and during the summer and all that.
I love that. Didn't jump in at the level of like executive. You came through the front door and you worked your way up security guard. And
yeah, so it worked. It was a part-time gig, and just because at the time you weren't routing a lot through Sioux Falls Arena, but I remember doing shows then I became the head of security in front of house. And I remember way back doing shows, and some of the promoters back then, I remember Doug Klaus would be doing shows, bringing them through there. Steve Littman would bring shows through there.
Pride of St. Louis, Steve Littman.
Yeah. I still talk about it with Steve. We talk probably once a month or whatever. But thinking back to like 1989, who were bringing shows through there, it was a lot of Midwestern promoters, right? And yeah, so then I ran
I
security.
imagine McElrath was probably on the phone with you all the time, right?
Well, not with me, because remember, I was just
Oh, the security, right?
I was
Yeah.
a part-time front of house dude, right?
Right.
I
So,
was
but
there.
I imagine he was the big promoter doing all the Motley Crue type Poison shows back then.
Yeah, so remember, hair metal was huge, right? And so the Bon Jovis were coming through, and the Def Leppards and the Poisons, and everyone was coming through
The
South
age of
Dakota.
Doc McGee, my friend.
Yeah, and then country was always big in the Midwest, of course, but that was right when Garth started, I mean, just exploding on the scene and doing these massive arena shows, and country was just taking off. And so we started doing a lot of big country tours through there, and Ogden was getting the shows and routing them through. They would have the Target Center in Minneapolis at the time, and they would route them to Sioux Falls. And but yeah, we were starting to get a lot of concerts, which I fell in love with the music side more than anything.
We're going to get emails. The Target Center's still there. I know we're going to
Yes.
get emails after that. They have the Target Center. You said that as if it went away, and I know I'm going to get some emails.
Oh,
Target
it's
Center's
still there.
still very much the arena in that market.
Yeah. But in the meantime, in college, I was getting my degree. And then I thought, you know what? I'd love to do my marketing internship in the arena marketing department. So I learned about live event marketing and made friends with the marketing folks. And I probably did a year of an internship, marketing events, doing settlements. So I was doing 2 gigs. I was doing marketing and head of front of house. And then in 1995, there was a marketing position that opened up with Ogden in Anaheim, California, at the new Arrowhead Pond of Anaheim.
The pond.
The pond, yes.
Shout out to Tom Alexander.
Yes. So the pond had just opened up like a year before and partnered with Disney Sports as the new home of the Mighty Ducks. So this kid from South Dakota was lucky enough through working with Ogden to get a marketing coordinator job. So I flew and I moved my entire life from South Dakota to LA and Orange County.
Part of the problem with working in venues is to move up the chain, you have to be willing to move to some pretty interesting places.
Yes.
And I mean, it's like working in radio or television where you go where the job is. And
yes.
If that means Duluth, if that means bumfuck New Mexico, you go.
You got to do it.
As you move up through these random places and random buildings, you get more experience and more prestige jobs. But it really is like working in radio. You got to go to places. You don't get New York or Boston right off the bat. You got to work your way up to the A markets.
Well, it's funny. Well, and I was lucky because I was only, I was 23 years old. So I didn't have a family or kids. It's easier to do it, at that time in your life. But to go from South Dakota to LA, even at 23, it was like, it's a bit of a culture shock difference. But it was worth it, obviously. I worked there for, I got to remember, 4 or 5 years. And then I got an opportunity to move from the venue side to being a promoter on the promoter side with House of Blues Entertainment.
What was the job that you switched to at House of Blues?
I became the marketing director for Universal Amphitheater. So right at that time, I don't know if you remember, MCA Concerts was selling their promoter division off to House of Blues. I had the opportunity and interviewed and got the job as director of marketing for House of Blues concerts in LA for Universal Amphitheater. And then any shows that House of Blues was doing in arenas or third-party venues in the Southwest.
So who's running House of Blues at that time? Is that Larry Valen? Is that Jay Marciano? Who's at the helm in LA?
Jay Marciano was the head dog. He was the man in charge for, Greg Trojan was the head of House of Blues at the time, but Jay Marciano was going to run the House of Blues concerts division. So not the clubs, but the other arm, right?
Right, the concerts, the touring.
Yeah. So my first interview, really, and I'll never forget it, Steiny, was sitting in Alex Hodges' office.
The legend, King of Nederlander.
Dude, I am freaked out. I'm in a suit, right? I got my suit on. I'm sitting in his office he's got all the records on the walls.
Stevie Ray Vaughan, Allman Brothers, all the greats, right? Otis.
Yeah, and I'm such a massive and always have been a Stevie Ray Vaughan fan. And sitting in his office was, look back and it, probably wasn't intimidating if someone looked in on it, but I was scared out of my mind. And I interviewed with Alex and he talked for a long time, as Alex can do. And I absorbed every second of it. And I was lucky enough to get the job to be the marketing director. And my boss, Ingrid Gunn, who was the head of marketing for all of HOB Concerts at the time, she was my day-to-day boss and still one of my dearest friends and one of the loveliest people you'll ever meet in the world. But that whole crew, man, was Marciano from the talent buying and management side. So you had Marciano, you had Alex Hodges, you had Larry Vallon, was in the office next door, and then Melissa Miller, or who's now Melissa Ormond, of course. Bob Shea came on not long after that. Emily Simonich was doing all of the Latin buying for everything for HOB Concerts out there. And then Dave Hart came in for a while and was doing
he was
talent
running the
buying.
East Coast, right, Davey?
Yeah. And then Paolo Palazzo was a talent buyer there as well.
And this is just murderer's row, huh?
When I say I got to learn from the best, in my opinion, I got to learn from the best. To be a kid in his mid-20s, late 20s, in LA, everything that goes with putting on shows in LA, which it's like dog years. I think I've been lucky enough to be in New York and LA in this industry, and it's like dog years when you're doing those markets, right? It just, the spotlight's brighter, the pressure's more, because especially in LA, half the acts live there, half the managers and agents. So everything you're doing as a marketing person is seen by everybody in the industry. So if our ad in the LA Times wasn't on the right-hand side of the calendar section on the weekend, the talent buyer would get a call from the agent and the manager who were, hey, we were reading the paper on Sunday, and why is our ad on the left-hand side of the page and not on the right-hand side of the page? Back when obviously print was a thing. So I look back on those days and how much hair I lost, and obviously it's gone. But, over things like placement of ads and papers, and you can't run the radio spot if it ran twice in the same hour promoting a show, then we got a call saying, I'm not paying for that second ad that I heard on KLOS because they're too close together. And so my point being, not only do you learn a ton being in the LA market, but the pressure was double, especially for a kid like me who was still learning and afraid of everything and everybody. Because everybody just seems so large, right? The agents and managers, and of course the acts just seem like gods. And I'm just learning my way through marketing plans and how to do all that for music. And because I'd worked on mostly family shows and sporting events and some concerts, but it was a totally different ballgame being on the full-time promoter side. By the way, I wish everybody could in our hierarchy of our industry could work at every level, like be a promoter for a couple of years, be an agent, be a manager, work in management, so you have an appreciation for what every different level goes through in this life cycle of a show. Not that I don't know if it'd make anyone kinder, but I think people might be a little more, oh yeah, I get it. I get why you do that. I didn't before, but now that I know how a venue works, I understand why you're giving me that information or pushing back on that. So I was doing that for 5 years. And then I actually went back to Anaheim, believe it or not, when there was new management, new ownership for the Ducks in 2005. A local guy, Henry Samueli, bought the Ducks and the Arrowhead Pond, which became the Honda Center while I was there for my second route. And I was the head of marketing for the Honda Center from 2005 to 2007.
So a nice full circle trip back for you.
Yeah, the people in Anaheim were, Mike O'Donnell, rest his soul, who was the GM at the time in 2005, called me and said, I would love for you to come back if you can. We have new ownership. It's all different. And I love Michael to death and the whole team there. And by the way, back in those mid-90s when I first went there, sitting in our office in cubicles, it was me, Christy Castillo-Butcher was an event manager, Vanessa Cromer was our head of PR, Quinn Mackin, who's still there, Brad Main was our GM in the mid-90s, and Tim Ryan was the assistant GM. And of course, so you talk in the beginning about all these, hey, someone's got a story about me or whatever. It's a small industry, and the people who are still in it, we've all worked together, worked for each other at some point. But the people who came out of Anaheim are just, some of the biggest people still in the industry. So it's exciting.
I want to take a quick second to pause. And we've been joined by Luke Pierce, and just like Spicoli coming in late to Mr. Hand's class, it wouldn't be Promoter 101 if Luke didn't have a great story on why he missed the start of the I don't even know if you guys know each other, but Brian, Luke?
We've met, but I don't know Luke well.
It's good to see you, Brian, and thanks for making time on the podcast here. Literally, of all things here, I have one of my clients who shall for this podcast and not be named, experiencing some small legal troubles outside of a venue here in Tennessee. So a rush to handle a few things here. So a little afternoon fun here.
Right on.
All good. So we're up to college, the way into the industry, working his way back through some of the other venues, and then returning back to the Honda Center as the head of marketing at this point. So it's a full circle moment. We haven't connected that to Boston yet, but I have a feeling.
Yeah, we're getting there. And the cool thing was I got so lucky when I went back to Anaheim in 2005, because in 2007, the Anaheim Ducks won the Stanley Cup. So to be a part of that run with the team and the building and the whole crew was phenomenal.
So do you have a ring?
Yeah, I have a ring with my name on it. Yeah,
That's so cool.
That's cool.
It's pretty damn cool. It might have been the lowest rated NHL finals watched in the history because it was Anaheim versus Ottawa.
You got a ring though. Like Lee Zeimelman, you're part of the history.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we won at home, which was even cooler. So to have that party at home and that went all night afterwards, and it was just, and we went up to Ottawa. The owner, Henry Samuele, who's still the owner of the team, just wonderful guy, was cool and flew the directors up. Even if you were just like, I was on the venue side, right? I didn't have anything day to day to do with the team, but because it was all one ownership group or one management group, he was so cool and flew us all up for the games when we played in Ottawa. So to be in Canada for a Stanley Cup final was pretty cool to see what goes on with the shenanigans with the Canadians during the Stanley Cup final.
The poutine
There's so much fun.
Frothier. It's awesome.
It was so fun. But here's the irony of, we win the Stanley Cup, right? And so June, 2 weeks after we won the cup, I went into my boss's office at the time and said, I'm giving my 2 weeks notice. And they're like, what? Wait, what? What'd you just say? I said, well, I've been offered a great job with AEG and I'm moving and going to work in Newark, New Jersey. They looked at me like I lost a bet. Like, okay, wait a minute. You live 2 blocks from the ocean in Long Beach, California, and you're now going to work in Newark, New Jersey. I don't understand.
Now, what year is this?
So this is 2007. 2007. I had found out they were building a new arena, through all my friends at the NHL and different teams and buildings. The Devils were building a new arena in Newark, New Jersey. New home of the 3-time Stanley Cup New Jersey Devils. And AEG Facilities was going to manage the venue for the new ownership of the Devils, and they desperately needed a vice president of marketing and PR to work on it.
Is this when Randy and Lewicki are running everything?
So Lewicki was still head of AEG at the time. Yep. Randy was AEG Live, and Lewicki was all of AEG. And then you had the myriad of AEG Facilities people with Chuck Steedman, and you had Bob and the facilities guys. Rich Creswick was a part of it, Jay Cooper, all those guys. And I interviewed with them, and they offered me the job. And when you're an arena guy, one of the greatest things you can put on your resume is that you're part of an arena opening, like that you are part of not only booking and marketing operations, whatever it is, but opening a new venue in a market. And then especially if you can do it in a market like New York and Northern Jersey, in a major city, that's something that's really great to have on a resume, because the pain and suffering you go through opening a new building in a new market, it's crazy, but it's one of the greatest fulfilling.
It's like being able to brag that you've been through the whole thing with the building commission and you somehow got the venue open anyway.
Well, I didn't have to do anything, which was great. And here was the caveat. So the building opened in October of 2007. I didn't get out there until July of 2007. It was opening in 3 months. And there was a lot of AEG people that weren't even on the ground yet. And that's a whole nother story that involved timing and the Devils ownership at the time and whatever. But we opened the building, and these shows were already on sale with 10 nights of Bon Jovi for the newest. Remember
them?
Yeah, they're gonna make it someday.
The local band, right?
Well, yeah, it was funny because 10 nights of Bon Jovi intermixed with, and it weren't consecutive. It was like 2 nights on, and then you had to load out because we were bringing in, because the NHL season was opening. It was the same week, I think, as NHL was opening. NHL season. So we had to load out for Devils games, and then Seton Hall was our tenant from NCAA basketball. So you were loading in and loading out, but that's what we opened with, and a UFC event, I think, within a month. But this was the first new arena.
Before they only played the White House, right?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
There you go. This was the first, by the way, this was the first new arena in New York and New Jersey in 30 years. Because you had at the time you had Nassau, right? You had the Garden, and you had the Izod Center, which was Brendan Byrne before that, Continental Airlines Arena, next to Giant Stadium.
And that's before you start counting the sheds that they can start taking away from your arena business in the middle of the summer.
Yeah, exactly. So, and they were putting an arena in downtown Newark, not out in the burbs. So it was, something.
It's not hard to compete with MSG because it's not like acts want to play that legendary room. Like it's easy to get those events, right?
Oh yeah, sure. Well, here's what would happen with the A-level acts back in the day. They would route 3 shows through that area. They would do Izod Center in Jersey, they would do Madison Square Garden in Manhattan, and they would do Nassau Coliseum out in the island. You could run those venues, right, and not compete against each other. I mean, Nassau is way out there, right? You're not competing with Jersey, and the Garden's the Garden, right? So, and to this day, you can still, a lot of those acts still play New Jersey and then play MSG or Barclays, and now they'll play for Schulman's Room out there, UBS Arena, from what I remember. But I was there. This is funny.
To pay that Union One labor bill so many times over.
Well, if your union only has one number in it, yeah, you're in for some bills.
That just means they're that good. They were the original. They earned it.
Well, you get what you pay for too. I mean, you get the best of the best, in New York with the unions. They're the most experienced. It's funny because I started as the marketing and PR guy in Newark. Within a year, I had told our GM when I started, hey, I want to learn booking and get into booking. He said, okay, we'll work on that when we get going. And about 8 months later, he said he was resigning and he left. He said, well, here you go. You're doing all the booking. I'm like, well, it would have been good to, have a little coaching. He's like, well, sometimes the best way is to just dive right in. So I became the vice president of booking for Prudential Center in Newark. And, thank God I had a lot of support back at the time, AEG corporate offices helping me work.
How did you find that switch over from marketing to buying? Because those are 2 different hats and they're quite different people that you're dealing with on a daily basis.
Yeah. Well, obviously I had been doing marketing a long time, and not to say I was sick of it or anything, but I was ready for a new challenge. Marketing people like myself are a bit more social than, maybe some other areas of the industry. And I knew that booking was having relationships, strong relationships was the key to booking, just like marketing. And I felt I could do that and build those. I was just much more interested in the deal side and getting to know the agents better and getting to know the promoters better outside of the marketing teams, right? And I knew a lot of the buyers, but it wasn't, the connection wasn't as strong because I wasn't on the buying side. I was the marketing guy. So, but I wanted to have those connections. I knew to move up in the industry, I had to get out of marketing. Yeah. For me, my thought was that, like, I need to get in the actual day-to-day talking to the agents and managers and everybody else directly. And that's the way to move up.
How much of a learning curve was that? How long did it take you to get up to?
I'm still learning. I mean, geez. No, it took a while. It took quite a while. I mean, because I got thrown into the New York market with an NHL tenant. I got thrown another curveball. In addition to just learning about booking, I got thrown some curveballs because we had an NHL tenant, and Big East basketball with Seton Hall. So we had 2 tenants in the building, but then the Nets came over for 2 years. So we had an NBA tenant in addition because they were building Barclays Center. So they had left Izod, and we were like this 2-year stopgap before Barclays was built. So now I'm trying to book
right now, huh?
Yeah. So I'm trying to okay, dealing with the NHL, dealing with the Big East. Now I've got to learn about dealing with the NBA and all their rules for date submissions and playoff holds and all that. And then if that wasn't enough, Madison Square Garden underwent a renovation, and we ended up taking the Liberty in for 2 years. So now I got the WNBA in there. And I was losing my mind. I had 4 tenants plus all the concerts and family shows and the Felds. And, you look back and I'm like, I don't know how I survived without the support I did from, corporate. And Rich Creswick at the time was helping me out a lot with understanding the NHL and NBA better on date submissions and how to navigate playoff holds and arguing and fighting with promoters why you can't have a date during the playoffs. And it was insane.
How many dates? Well, you had the extra 2 teams visiting you that you were playing host residency to. How many dates did you wind up working that year? I can't imagine you had a lot of nights off of your.
I don't even remember.
you're doing all the concerts and you're doing all the sports teams. Like you guys must have been running close to over 300 plus shows a year at that point.
It was, yeah, there was 2 years there where it was, I don't remember the numbers, but it was, because I was trying to remember how many, at the time, how many arenas.
I would say how like was that the busiest if you like count on show nights or dark nights, like the busiest arena in America easily, right? I mean with that number that
Other than the Garden,
sure, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we were probably top three. I mean,
the Garden was renovating, weren't they down?
No, they stayed open. They managed to stay open during their renovations. And you can ask Feiberger about that and JoJo, and they'll tell you some crazy stories, I'm sure. By the way, two of the most wonderful people in the business in general, too. I love JoJo and Randy and everyone over there. But yeah, I was trying to think. Philly might have been up there because they had NBA, NHL, and then Georgetown. Was it George? No, not Georgetown.
Staples has to be up there at that time too, right? Because there wasn't the Forum wasn't open and there's no amphitheater there, so that's got.
Oh, that's correct. Because then you had the Clippers there, you had the Lakers there, you had the Kings there, and then you had the Sparks
on top of hockey.
Yeah.
Or
that's the Kings. Yeah.
And back then, and at that time, Christy Castillo was booking Staples back then, right? And so, and we, like I said, we've been such amazing family friends for so long since the Anaheim days. It was good to, chat back and forth. And, I learned a bunch from Christy too. I would call her and because she had all those tenants and, but it was a giant learning curve. And I don't know how I got through it, but that was my biggest training, and again, without support, it would have been a train wreck. Some of my career highlights, of course, were in Newark. Did the 50th anniversary of the Rolling Stones before they toured the official tour. So there were 2 dates in London at the O2 and 2 dates in Newark at the Prudential Center, which is a strange mix. But I was fortunate enough to work with the Dainty group on that, and Jim Glancy from the Bowery was a huge part of that. And then I think they added a Brooklyn date. So they did add a show at Barclays on that run. But and then after those, they announced the full 50th anniversary tour. And then they went out worldwide after that. But somewhere, you guys, if you get a chance, somewhere online, you can Google the Rolling Stones 50th anniversary tour announcement and that the guys in the band did. And they talk about the two of the greatest, I think it was 2 cities that really know how to rock was London and Newark. I knew everyone outside of my group was just like, wait a minute, what? That may be the proudest moment of my professional career. I'm not even kidding.
Thank you, Amy Morrison, for writing a great quote, I'm sure.
God love Amy Morrison. Yes, I'm sure she had a big hand in helping get that all put together. I love Amy Morrison to death. She's wonderful. Yeah. And Kelly. Well, actually, now that I think about that, no, Amy wouldn't have been involved because this was before AEG got the tour.
It was a handful of dates. Because the guys from Virgin were still involved, right? Richard Branson was doing it with Dainty, right?
Yeah. So Virgin Live, Richard Branson was going to do the tour, right? And then for these dates, he got for the New York, New Jersey dates, he got Bowery involved to be day to day on the ground, helping with navigate and put the shows up and operations. And so Glancy and I have an inside joke where it's like we see each other and like, we'll always have the Stones. That's the Stones at the Prudential Center. And that became a worldwide pay-per-view. They filmed one night for worldwide pay-per-view, and WWE actually handled the pay-per-view for that. So they partnered with Vince and came in because WWE had done a lot in our arena, and they loved the building and knew it so well from pay-per-views and TV. And I think that that was probably behind the scenes. I don't know, that they could have helped out in helping us get the show, saying what a great venue it is for TV. I don't know, but I'd like to think so. So, in addition to all the stuff you do in arenas, that was 13 years at the Prudential Center in Newark. And then I eventually became a Devils employee the last, 4 or 5 years of that. So then I left in January of 20.
Is that how you found Boston?
Yeah. Yeah. So
you left right before COVID?
Oh, so it's another story. So my wife is from Boston, but she hadn't lived in New England in over 20 years. And we always talked about if we could get back, if we could get there, we would want to raise our kids there. And I don't know what my kids were 11 and 9 at the time. This job came up and I had, it was a theater gig as vice president of booking for the Wang Theater and the Shubert Theater. And I had never worked in theaters, but I assume the nuts and bolts are the same, right? As arena bookings in some respect.
Sure.
The economics are different, of course, but you still have an artist, you still have an agent, you still have a promoter, you got a venue, so you're like, okay, the Jenga pieces are all the same, right? I interviewed for it and I was offered the job, and it was a tough decision because I loved the people in Newark and everyone I worked with, and Sean Sadid was there, and
I'm a huge Sean fan. He's great. I've known him. I've known him since he was in Arizona.
I love Sean. Sean is wonderful. He's super smart and knows how every facet of the business works. He's a great guy. And Jordan Harding was there at the time too with us, and now he's with Niederlander out in LA. But it was I would say more than anything it was more of a family move. It's where we wanted to raise our kids. My wife's family is all up here, and so we took the gamble. And I went from working for the ownership group at the time when I left Newark, owned the Philadelphia 76ers, and they still do, the Devils, the Prudential Center Arena. They had part of Crystal Palace. I was going to leave that organization, HBSE, and go work for an independent, nonprofit, small group of like 30 in some theaters in downtown Boston. So it was a big change going from private equity owners and that whole sports conglomerate to an indie nonprofit group. But I'm like, I want to do it. I want the experience. And I wanted to work in downtown Boston. I love Boston, always have. So I took the job. I was there 4 weeks and we shut down. COVID took us out. And I was still commuting from Boston back to New York Penn because I lived in Hoboken the entire time I was in Jersey. So I would commute 3 days a week in Boston back to New York Penn and Jersey till like we were going to find a house and, figure out where we're going to live and what the hell's going on. So 4 weeks in, as I'm still commuting, dude, we shut down. So I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to have a job. Like, I just got hired. Well, everyone thought, right? Oh, this will be a couple weeks, a month. All right, well, and of course we all know how that turned out. So I was nervous for a while that I had just taken a new job, committed to moving to Boston. I don't know if I'm gonna have a gig, but thank God our CEO at the time, we had to lay people off and we all had to take pay cuts, but he kept me on, and we had to navigate moving shows like everybody else did 28 times. I got involved with NEVA early on I guess it might have been April or May, and working with Dana and the whole crew on the SVOG stuff, which I will say huge shout out to Dana Frank and her crew, as far as what they did at that time and what they still do, but they moved mountains to save a lot of people and a lot of venues. And we all know that you're all very fond and know the story of what they did. And to be a small part of that on a couple committees was really rewarding, and it saved our ass as an independent theater. So, but anyway, the first 2 years of my new job in Boston, I don't think I booked a show because we were
just moved a bunch of old ones,
moving them all around. Yeah. And so then, we came out of it like everybody else and started ramping up, and it's been so rewarding being part of the theater world. I absolutely love theaters.
Now, you guys have got two of the coolest venues in Boston, and that's a market with a lot of venues.
Yeah.
MGM is clearly having a serious moment as the new kid on the block with the way that place sets up, and clearly has to be some competition with Wang. But I still think the Wang has got the coolest name of any venue. 13-year-old boy coming out.
It would.
I love it, man. It's the Wang.
The Boch Center Wang. So Ernie Boch is our naming rights partner. It's his family. So it's the Boch Center, Wang Theater, and Shubert Theater. And so for people who don't know, the Wang Theater used to be the music hall back in the day, and before that it was the Metropolitan. So the Wang actually turns 100 years old this year. Next month is our official 100th birthday. And the Shubert across the street, my marketing team is going to kill me. 113 years old, 115 years old. I can't remember. These buildings are old, and we spend most of our time just trying to keep them up from a maintenance perspective. And you guys probably have an idea what it costs to run historic landmark buildings, the cost of upkeep and maintenance.
It's one thing to run a theater, but to keep a theater in the pristine condition of the Wang. Look, I don't know if you've been in there, but like it is without a doubt one of the classiest 5 theaters in America. The thing is
absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Because we work really hard to keep it restored, just like it, as close as it.
One of the few venues that's using the restoration fee to actually keep their venue restored.
Thank you. From your mouth to God's ears. Oh, we just had to, and I'm not an ops guy, but there was a fire pump system repair that had to come up recently that we weren't ready for, and it was over $700,000. That's just one maintenance item that came up. Think about the light bulbs we replaced. They don't even make the light bulbs for those old theaters anymore. But anyway, I could go on about maintenance, but moving into the theater side of it, like I said, the nuts and bolts are the same as the arena. But what I love about theaters, obviously you have access to much more content because there's so many more acts and artists that can play rooms that are either 1,500 cap like the Shubert or 3,500 cap like the Wang, right? And so one night you're doing a world music event, and the next night you're doing Queens of the Stone Age, and the next night you're doing Van Morrison, and then I'm doing the Gypsy Kings and Paw Patrol. You get access and you get exposed to so many more kinds of live entertainment on the theater side, which I love to death.
Plus, you can compete with Bill Blumenreich on a daily basis. Who's your
Bill? Is my neighbor. He is. He's also a client, and so Bill and I have a fine relationship. We compete. He'll tell you the same thing. We compete, but I have, in fact, with Bill, I have 5 shows this week with Bill in the Wang with John Mulaney. But what I also loved about the theater side that I didn't get in the arena side, especially in this day and age, is I got to buy a lot more shows. I got to be the promoter. I get to be the promoter of shows. It's still not the majority. We're still, we're the only room, I think, guys. There's maybe one other room in Boston that's an open room, right? We welcome everybody.
Everyone. Yeah.
Anybody can promote. Live Nation, AEG, Outback, Mammoth, Nederlander, you name it. Ours is an open room. Plus, of course, I will buy direct when and if I can. As I appreciate the history in the market if someone's got history. But if I also feel the show really belongs in my theater versus another venue, I'm going to compete for it. So again, a lot of the promoters are competitors and clients. But being able to buy direct has been awesome for me. Because in the arena world, you think about it, right? Everything's a tour nowadays, it seems, right? That comes through a major arena or a major city. So I don't know how much arena buyers are getting to do buy direct. And on the theater side, it's so much more wide open, which is a lot of fun.
So you talked about, fighting for shows or being competitive for shows that you think belong in your room. What's the deciding factor for when you say this belongs in the Wang or this belongs in the Shubert? What are the things that you're looking for in artists, an audience, whatever? How are you making that determination?
Well, as Steiny said earlier, there's a ton of competition in Boston. Yeah. For the size of the market, you guys know Boston is a small, big city. You can walk the damn place. And for as small of a city as it is, I think I think Live Nation has 9 rooms in Boston that they either own or operate. AEG Bowery has 3.
He's got a good footprint too,
right? Yeah. And then you got like you mentioned, Bill. He's got his 2 rooms in Boston, the Wilbur and the Chevalier. I've got the Shubert and the Wang. Then you got Ambassador Theater Group down the street that runs the Emerson Colonial. For rooms that are 5,000 cap or under in Boston, I think you probably have around 15. And I'm probably missing some, right? But more directly to answer your question, obviously we're a seated theaters. We can't do GA shows. So, right then, if someone wants GA, I'm out. I'd love to be able to do it, but, being a historic landmark, I don't even think we could renovate our buildings to offer GA in addition to seated. But, but if there's an artist that, going back to when it was the Metropolitan, the music hall, it was a rock room. But in the 60s and 70s, theaters like that, that's where everybody in rock played. There was no real GA theater, right? There was
just more festival standing, right? Like people just flowed. Security didn't keep it the same.
Yeah, state fair sort of vibes, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like the Grateful. I think the band that has the most performances at the Wang in history is the Grateful Dead. and Neil Young. But you look at, of course, Springsteen played there, and all the, Pink Floyd and Aerosmith and all the legendary bands played the Wang Theater. And now it's, with GA rooms, GA floors, there's a movement towards that, even for some older demos. But if I think the demo wants a seated venue, have the option to even sit for 10 minutes, I'm going after it. And I don't care what genre it is. I'm gonna, I'll plead my case. And there's just some acts that want.
If you have any dates available, like.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we don't
You
have.
guys aren't running dark very often.
Well, one of our big advantages is we're not the Broadway house in Boston. So we don't have the 3 weeks of Hamilton and the whatever, that all goes to the Opera House. So we have a lot more open dates than a venue like that, which is great. But, depending on the demo, depending on the kind of music, I'm not going to do, we did Mastodon and Opeth. So we done a few of that kind of.
They're with Borgia this week.
Yeah, right. Aren't they? I think who else we've done Nine Inch Nails, but that's for bands like that, they got to want to do something different than what they normally do, right? That's something, playing a seated theater like that, it's a different tour.
Yeah, different.
Well, here's a good example. We have Queens of the Stone Age coming up, and which normally we probably would have played called it a rock, what people perceive
probably
as
a GA floor at MGM was what I would have figured.
But they went and recorded their latest album in the caves. Someone's going to yell at me for not remembering the name of the tour. I can't remember anything, but it's more of a bit of a different vibe for them, right? And that was something that they decided they want to do some cool seated theaters. And when it comes to that, the agents know that in Boston, the first place you're going to go was the Wang, which is awesome. So I will fight for anything that I think belongs there. But again, I will respect.
Historic, but I am a huge fan of the Shubert. It's like the perfect size in Boston. It's super cool. It's got that cool vibe to it.
Yeah, when you're 115 years old, there's ghosts. There's, it's got
always ghosts.
It's got character. It absolutely has character. And I love a 1,500 cap room. And we're the only room in Boston that is that size. I mean, right around 1,500 or a little more. So it fills a nice, cool niche. And the sound, what's cool about these old theaters is this new venues that are built spend millions of dollars trying to develop that perfect sounding room. Well, you go back to these old theaters that are 100 years old, and they just naturally have, I think, the best sound of any kinds of venues in the country. I don't know what it is about how they built those theaters back in the 1920s, but the sound in the Wang and the Shubert, and I would like to think whether it's the Auditorium Theater in Chicago or any of these venues that are around this old, the sound is unbelievable. People try to emanate that now and have to spend all this money, and we're just lucky enough that we have it. Van Morrison, the last few times he's come through Boston, he loves the Shubert. He plays the Shubert. Don was up recording some music. I can't remember what artist, but he just said it's one of the best sounding rooms he's ever been in. And you're right, Steiny. It's just a great, cool vibe. The old 3-level, 1,500 cap, but it's got 3 levels. It's intimate. And you got the big chandelier. There's just, they don't make them like that anymore.
We haven't had a venue personnel on the podcast since June 3rd of 2021.
June 3rd of 2021. That was pandemic still, right?
Yeah.
Coming out of it. Lori Jacoby was the last guest we had that represented the venue side. And we've been called out quite a bit from the industry saying, where the hell are our venue folks at? And I want to thank you for making time and
of course
helping us cover that part of the industry that we have not talked to in for so long, but long.
Well, I think in the final parting words or whatever, I've been in the industry since that t-shirt security guard, standing on the corner of the court now for 35 years. And I've just been so fortunate to get to work on the promoter side and the venue side. And I just tell everyone, especially younger people, I'm like, if you can move around, like I said before, try to work for management, try to work for agencies, try to work, outside of the venue. So you really understand what everybody else goes through. So you really see how the sausage is made, because then you're just wiser and smarter in the decisions you make, at whatever point you are in your career. But at the end of the day, I'm a venue rat. I'm an arena and theater, boots on the ground. Not that titles matter, but as a VP or president, I'd still be running around at every show. got to get your hands dirty.
That's a good headline for a lot of people in the business in general right there.
Brian, we can't thank you enough for joining us on Promoter 101. When in Boston, make sure to check out both the Wang and the Shubert. There ain't nothing like that experience of the Boch Center venues. Brian, Gale, thank you so much for sharing your history with us and giving us a little bit of time right here on Promoter 101.
Thank you all so much. It was an honor being on it.
They thought they wanted careers. Turns out they just wanted paychecks. Steiny and Luke in the morning on Promoter 101.
Conferences. Luke, there are so many conferences. They're all over the country. You could really just go to conferences and do nothing else but do the schmooze day in and day out and just be home for Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's Eve at this point.
I mean, we are at the start of it right here, Dan. We've been in conference season by the time this podcast comes out now for the better part of 2 months, and it's going to keep wrapping up now, extending out until April, if not May of each year. So we get a brief respite in some cases during the summer, but it's a 9-month-a-year business for sure for those of you who wish to go to every single one of these. Now, I don't think we're going to spend the entire podcast here breaking down the ins and the outs of every single conference here, but I think for those who are listening, and especially those who are new to the business, understanding which one of these conferences are important to go to, what's different about them, what makes them special, and kind of their seat in the business right now, I think is important to take an evaluation of. So you want to break it down?
Well, let's hit the key bumps of the most important ones, right? So we'll get into that as we go. I want to say conference season starts for me in October with IEBA. And it literally starts 3 weeks beforehand because I like to get my flu vaccine 3 weeks out and my COVID vaccine 2 weeks out before I'm in a room with 1,200 people with everybody hugging on everybody else. So for me, as soon as I know I'm 3 weeks out, I'm making sure I'm starting to get those vaccines in. So I'm like, hopefully got as much immunity as possible when I walk into that big room.
Flu, definitely important. COVID, we don't have that here in Nashville, so you don't have to worry about that. We just keep going.
I've heard such a thing, yeah.
Yeah, we don't know what that is. The Grand Hyatt is immune to whatever that is. We haven't had it here since, I don't know, June 2020 at this point. So,
well, you got a minute on this, but I've done 2 additional shots this year because I've hit 50, that you get these extra requirements of this is what you should be doing. So yesterday, I got my shingles shot, which is the first of 2, special limited edition collection, 1 of 2. I also did the pneumonia shot, which I didn't realize there was such a thing, but apparently every time you turn around now, somebody at Safeway is going to give you a shot and then 10% off your groceries. Anyway, I find it to be a great time to get the shots right before you start hugging 1,200 people at IEBO. Just seems like a good moment to get updated on your vaccines if you do them. If you don't believe in them, please don't email me. I don't care. I'm not having the science fight with you.
I, on the other hand, happy to have the science fight with you. You can email me at Steiny@promoter101.net. It'll go right to me.
I think we should have my educated wife in the science field take these people on, but yeah, let's move on.
All right, so Dan, you're kicking off the fall season, and I think it's appropriate because this is October, and we're talking through, we just came out of IEBA, we gave ourselves a nice little recap, in episode 235 of what went down here. Let's talk about what comes after IEBA. Let's do this in calendar succession, as we got some things to preview ahead, as well as just give people a sense of where the year is. Now, let me also just say this too about IEBA and its place in the business in general. You know, I think IEBA has become what, for a lot of things, APAP was 5 years ago, right? APAP was kind of the beginning of the booking season for a lot of PAC stuff. It was always a different crowd, right? Fairs, festivals, casino buyers. Now
it's Redneck Polestar originally.
Redneck Polestar, right?
It grew up and hipped up, and you got to give it to Pat Matthews, who just retired, for how well she programmed. And she got everybody involved. And part of it is it's in the middle of the country. Most people can drive there. It's not super expensive. And quite a lot of venues come out. The content is usually very good. And you're going to see the agents. You're going to see the managers. You're going to see the promoters. You're going to see the venues. And the hang is outstanding. I would call this the Bonnaroo of conferences at this point.
A bold comparison, because I feel like we have less rain and less mud and less mushrooms, and Ed Helms is doing a super jam, but nonetheless, it's a good nod because it is that tier of conference, especially in the live business.
And it's, in the South.
And it's in the South. And now, I think 5-6 years ago, when people were really starting their kind of booking season in January, trying to, PACs especially, filling up those brochures that have to go out in April or May, routing is so far out these days, right? I mean, we're looking 12 months at least out for most of our clients getting holds, especially in like theater, even club world these days. The season for the next year, you can't start it in January anymore. You can't be coming to a conference at the top of the year and expecting to have good results in terms of getting the rooms that you want, getting the routings that you want. And so its place 3 months towards the end of the year as you look forward to the next counter year, I think is even more important now.
Well, let's stop for a second and break that out, because you sound like you go to a conference to get business done, like actual hard business, like you're sitting down with a route book and you're getting stuff done with an agent, a manager, a promoter, which I know historically we've done, but I think the conferences have moved on from that. And I wonder if you have a different agenda than I do now when I go to a conference.
I certainly don't go there expecting to wrap things up and sit down with my route books. A lot of agents are, a lot of venues are, right? As a manager, no, I'm not going to conferences to necessarily figure out my routes for any particular time of year, whether it be AIBA in October, or APAP in January, or Polestar in April. I'm not going there with that intention. No, I'm going there to keep our network fresh, to look for opportunity, to connect with venue folks that I don't see more than once or twice a year that all have descended into one place, and to make sure that our roster and our mind is putting forward in front of venue managers, promoters, festival fair buyers, all sorts of things on that front of things. It's about the networking, and it's about seeing people that I only get to see 2-3 times a year that might be scattered across the globe when I go to these conferences. But tell me if I'm wrong about this, Dan. I mean, I take meetings and coffees sitting next to an agent that is open there with his sheets, pitching out to stuff. The agencies still have their booth. The agent's alley is still a thing. Venues are going looking for content. It's still a thing for sure. It's not why I go to conferences, but that sort of business is being done at these things.
Sure, there's a lot of that. And the one thing I will say IE was very good at, that a lot of the conferences aren't, is they do a introduction to the newest members. If it's your first year at AIBA, they will bring you into a room. They will tell you exactly what's going on and how to best work the conference from the inside, which I think is outstanding. I know APAP also does something, and we'll get to APAP in a second, but I think it's an outstanding way to bring everybody in and say, this is what the conference is for. Now, for me, I think it's about seeing people. Yeah. As David Britz would say, it's about the hang. And in some cases, you're not going to get to Wichita, Kansas. You're not going to get to Orlando. You're not going to get to Tallahassee. So there are venues in the room you're never going to see in person that year because you can only cover so many dates, and the dates you're covering most likely aren't in Mobile. So when you get that chance to see those GMs and have that conversation and have that hug and that moment and you reconnect, it really helps when you're emailing later, you're trying to figure out how to fill a date and whether they can turn that seventh hold into a confirmation for you when you really need it for your routing. And that stuff is what happens over the cocktails, that bonding that you make over dinner, cocktails, coffee, what have you. That's the invaluableness of the conference, where it just seems like if you see it on social media, it looks like we're all screwing around in a room and throwing a bunch of money around on dinners and booze. And there's a lot of that. Don't get me wrong. It can be a good time if you're good at this. But more importantly, you should never leave a conference without it paying for itself. And that's the sign of a bad conference, is when you leave and you don't feel like you got anything out of it, and then 3 months later, you still haven't seen any business come back from it. That's a conference you don't go back to. That's not a conference. That's just you hanging out. That's a work vacation, essentially. And honestly, there's plenty of other options. If you're not pulling the business from that event, you're either doing it wrong or you need to find a different event to make your investment in. Because when you're glad having people in those rooms, as fun as that is, it needs to lead to paying for itself and bringing back revenue for your company.
No doubt. And these, by most accounts, you said this is one of the more affordable conferences. True, albeit the registration's on the lower end of the scale versus a Polestar or some of the places too. But when you factor in your travel, your hotels, your meals for a couple of days, you're easily looking at a price tag of plopping down $4,000 to $5,000 before you get any expensive meals when you come into these things. So you've got to work these things to make them work for you.
True. There's usually a discount for staying at the conference hotel.
Sure.
Book early, get the discounted early bird registration. If you're going, decide you're going. Set up your meals, make sure that you get that hit list. And on top of that, there are people you'll meet at a conference through networking, through your other friends that you may never get on the phone that'll open that door. And those are the people that could become friends and bring in business for you for life. You never know exactly who you're going to be sitting next to in line for coffee.
That is the truth. So we've got some conference 101s out the way, Dan. Let's keep going down the list of conferences here because after AIBA, we've got a full list of things throughout the rest of the conference season year.
The biggest of them of the year by name stature at least is Polestar Live in America.
In America, certainly, right? I believe IE was the oldest booking conference. I could be wrong about that. IFE could be displacing that. I think AIBA just celebrated its 51st year of existence. Yes, I know 50th was Pam's last year's, which was last year. So I think this was the 51st edition of AIBA. Polestar, previously CIC, right?
Yeah, but you're talking about 30 years there.
30 or so years, right? Yep.
Yeah, I think it was 94. That was the first CIC.
Yeah.
LA at the Century Plaza Hotel, Beverly Hills.
And today, now under the purview of the Oakview Group, it is still in Los Angeles, although last year, in response to the devastating fires in Southern California, they moved it from its usual February to April. And it seems like that rotation has stuck, right?
Right, which is nice because it moves it away from ILMC because they were back-to-back for a couple of years, a week at a time. And it's a lot if you're an international player and a U.S. player where you have to go from both conferences. Hard to dig out over the weekend and get back on a plane 48 hours after spending a week at Polestar and going to LMC, which is the European version of Polestar, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But it's in Southern California. It's kind of the Coachella of the music business as far as festivals go or conferences go. It has moved to April. They haven't announced what hotel it is yet, but it's going to be somewhere in Los Angeles, and I'm guessing Beverly Hills area. It's interesting because Oakview does own Polestar now, and you've seen a lack of AEG participating at Polestar since they bought it. And I think that's the one thing AIBA has going for it is it's not affiliated with any of the promoters or any of the venue groups. They're kind of an independent per se.
No doubt, too. And they sandwiched this second edition of the April Polestar right again in between. I believe we had a June Polestar back during COVID times, but this is the second April Polestar in back-to-back years where it's sandwiched right in between Coachella 1 and Coachella 2. Hoping they'd catch people on their way to and from or either way to the desert from Southern California. And it's certainly an interesting strategy to kind of keep people in Southern California for the 10 days in between those two very big weekends in the desert.
And in all fairness to them, by the way, Rich Schaefer spoke last year on one of the panels, so they've definitely made efforts to get AEG there, and you see them winning awards, and they show up and accept them. So it seems like the ground might be loosening a little bit, and I know Ray Waddell and his team have been working on trying to bridge that gap a little bit.
No doubt. It's always, fantastic top of their game presentation on the moderation side of things, from Michael Rapino to Irving Azoff to some of the biggest names in the industry. And I think that really
including you and me,
including you and I, former multiple time speakers at Polestar. But it really does tend to have a focus on the larger acts and larger venues in the business. I feel like it's less and less independents attending this thing as years goes by, especially as they have raised rates and moved it during a time between Coachella. In the last couple of years, I have noticed less independents at Polestar, but nonetheless, still a well-attended conference that tends to sell out every year. Phenomenal work, honestly, on the part of Ray and OVG to put forward a great slate of programming last year. I assume it's going to be the same this year. I think they've started to trickle out some early participants for this year, but it's always, some of the biggest names, and getting that kind of insight and intel is super valuable to be able to sit in those rooms and glean a little bit of knowledge from some of the biggest players in the game.
Look, when Irving speaks, when Michael speaks, when Rich Schaefer speaks, we want to hear what those guys say. You're going to get Dolan on stage there. Ray is great at putting all that together, and those guys talk, and we all shut up and listen because nobody else needs to be talking when those guys are laying it out for you.
No doubt. We've covered AIBA, we've covered Polestar, two of the biggest conferences in the game. There's still plenty of things that are worth paying attention to inside the conference space for those of you looking to make the ROTA.
Well, let's go north. Let's go to Toronto for a second. Let's talk about the big one in Canada. There's a bunch of small ones, but Canadian Music Week, which I believe recently has also sold to Oakview Group.
Yes, they have.
Is in Toronto. It's May 4 to 10, 2026. And I believe it's now called Departure. And it's a mix of South by Southwest meets Mini Polestar. And it's better if you're a musician or a working band than industry, really, because they do showcases and they really do a great job of bringing bands from all over the world. And they even have this, the Canadian Arts Department helps with grant money and it's really a great place to like get discovered. They do a great job bringing music together. It's a great showcase event, and their programming is usually really outstanding, actually.
No doubt. And I've not been since the OVG acquisition. I heard some good things from Joe Giordano, of course, about the first year under the Departure banner last year. It's always been a great hang. It's always been a wonderful mix of mostly Canadians, but some Americans that venture up and traverse the Great White North above us. But it's always been a great conference where music has always kind of been at the centerpiece of it, much like South by Southwest's music portion of their programming, where performance, artists, they take really center stage here versus the business side of things. And I think that's something great because there's a phenomenal, strip of music coming out of Canada in all sorts of genres from rock to country these days. And so getting your feet in the ground there to understand what Canada is building is always great. So I wholeheartedly recommend this conference. For me, it's not an every year sort of thing. It's maybe once every other year, every third year for me to head up there. Great time when I'm not tied into Canada on the regular on a year for me to go up for, plus or minus a day on either side of it and see a bunch of our counterparts up in Canada. Doing enough business up there right now, it certainly justifies the trip. But if you're looking to be scouted as an artist, or you're looking to network with up-and-coming bands, it's a great place to go.
Also, while we're in Canada, just up to the north, Montreal hosts Just for Laughs. They've had some interesting changes over the year. Howie Mandel and ICM got involved, and then ICM broke up, and things changed a little bit. But conference went away for a minute, but it came back last year, and I believe they're now back on track. It's very much just for comedy. Both English and French-speaking comedians. The first week, I believe, is French. The second week is English. But it is an outstanding summer event, and any reason to go to Montreal is always worthwhile. So if you're into comedy, there's not a better event in the world than Just for Laughs. Highly recommend. It's industry for sure, but it is just the most fun you can possibly have on your expense account.
Well, I'll note too, last year that Departure, formerly Canadian Music Week, also seemed to have a lot of comedy on their lineup. So maybe a little turf war going on between the Canadian conferences in terms of who's going to take the mantle for that. But certainly Just for Laughs has got the pedigree, the history, the love from the comedians of that event on a year in, year out basis. So the fact that it is back full force makes me very, very happy.
Right, but on top of that, Just for Laughs has the galas that they film, so you're getting so much content, but you're going to see the Dave Chappelles and the David Crosses show up at Just for Laughs, whereas you're not going to see as much of that at any of the other events. They really are next level on how much you're going to see some of those superstar comics that you're seeing on Netflix and HBO.
No doubt.
Moving on, South by Southwest. Obviously, if you're an artist or a young manager, this is the Lollapalooza of music conferences. There's so many showcases. There's so many parties. It used to be a bigger deal before the labels lost all their budgets and pre-COVID, where the sponsorships really seem to not come back as hard. But this is truly where bands used to go to get discovered in the first place, and then it blew up to all of the big unannounced Jay-Z and Eminem playing unannounced, or Lady Gaga or Metallica doing it unannounced, and REM unannounced at Stubbs. Now they're kind of getting back to the roots, and it's March 12th to 18th of 2026. Austin, Texas, never a bad thing, and the content is outstanding. Catch the panels during the day, catch the music at night, and catch a good meal somewhere in between, and try to find some time to sleep.
You call Lollapalooza, I call it spring break for the music business, right? It is a great time to escape from whatever snowy place you're coming from, down to Austin, enjoy some barbecue, enjoy a few drinks, a ton of music. As you pointed out, Dan, this whole conference festival went through a crazy expansion from the early 2000s through the mid 2010s, where not only labels came in, but brands were coming in left and right. I mean, I remember 2013 to 2016, just kind of seeing the explosion of, there was a stage for Skype, which like blew my mind. It's not even a thing that we even talk about or use anymore. From every brand wanting to put their name on a stage somewhere, from Whole Foods to Microsoft to Vans to whatever local barbecue upstart tequila company was looking to sponsor something. And I think that definitely got axed in the last couple of years, which candidly, it grew too big. It'd be one showcase on top of another. There'd be 6 things in the same hour that you wanted to see, all in different parts, not just on 6th anymore in Austin, but one far end of town and one South Congress and all over the city. And so the reality here is that I think the move for South by to kind of return to its roots of music at the centerpiece here, they did away with, there was a tech and a film side of things to this. And I think music, certainly took the back seat in some of these cuts when it came down to brands leaving the space. But now I think it's a more manageable conference/festival experience where you can actually go in, not feel overwhelmed by having to run around to a million things that are all at once. It's still super busy, but it's nothing like what it was pre-pandemic for sure.
Not at all. I got to say, it's been several years since I've gone back. I really did love going to Austin every year, and it was a good time, and I got a lot out of it. I'd say the hotel is probably the biggest decision you make when you're going. If you're young and it's early and you're exploring South by, the Hilton is where you're going to meet a lot of people and do some schmoozing. If you're bigger industry and you're taking meetings and you don't need to be glad-handing as much, but you don't want a higher-end experience and bump into some of the higher-end people, the Four Seasons or the Driscoll, absolutely outstanding. Spencer's is a great steakhouse that you should hit if you want a quiet evening while you're in town, too, for a good meeting. Those are my South by suggestions.
I'm a huge fan of barbecue. Dear friend who has since passed, Leanne Mueller of the legendary Mueller barbecue family, was also an acclaimed photographer who I worked with for a very long time. She shot everybody from some of our clients to Willie to Dave to everybody. She has, her wife still owns, and it's now recently been awarded a James Beard Award for some of the best service in town. It's called La Barbecue, L-E Barbecue, C-U-E at the end of it. Fantastic
related to
stuff.
Franklin's too, right? There's some relationship there, if I remember correctly, between the
Mueller's is like we could go down the Texas barbecue family tree if we wanted to, but it was Mueller's was the name of the family, and then the brother I think started. He wasn't Franklin's, he was something else. They didn't get along very well, to be honest, to my recollection of things. Leanne was doing photography, and then barbecue was a side gig, and then all of a sudden barbecue became more of this. She came from barbecue royalty in Texas, but was a phenomenal lady and a phenomenal photographer. That's how I first knew her. I didn't even realize that she had that, at the time, barbecue food truck. And now it is a staple with a brick and mortar that's on the top of nearly every list in Austin. So I highly recommend that. And then head on down to South Congress and grab some Gordo's Donuts. It's fantastic.
Shout out to Aaron Franklin, because, man, they know what they're doing down there in Austin at Franklin's for sure. Let's talk about some of the other ones really quickly before we move on. APAP is the arts conference. It's the Association of Performing Art Professional. It's the first conference of the year. It happens January 9 to 13, 2026 in New York City. That's right. You start the year as cold as you fucking possibly can in New York City. Playoff football is happening. There's the biggest trade floor, I believe, in the industry. And it's 3 floors at the Hilton, New York. And it's a lot of fun seeing all the weird things going on in there between pro wrestlers walking around and monks tapping on sand and every agent in the world trying to sell you everything you could possibly imagine and getting 15-minute meetings with every single person, which is just crazy how they do it. But a lot of block booking and a lot of arts get done. But I would closely compare this to Fringe Fest comes to New York with a snobby stick up its ass.
I'm sure those representing jugglers in the high arts would really appreciate the stick up the ass comment, Dan. But yes, it does tend to lean a little bit more artsy in its presentation for sure, as well as the content that's around it. Plenty of Broadway, plenty of seasonal booking that happens in this thing. It's maybe the last bastion in America for subscription brochure business to get done at, which is a great way to build in theaters for sure. The idea of block booking is one place where this is still incredibly prevalent, and so it's worth a trip to kind of kick off your year to New York. If you can brave the cold, head up to the Hilton, check out APAP.
Ironically, since you mentioned the jugglers, Reed Bellstock is a juggler you always catch at the floor at the arts conferences. And he went to Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Saley Clown College. And he was the one kid that I went to high school with that would juggle at all the pep rallies. And I see him at all of the conferences trying to get booked. And he does successfully work as a clown. But you see him as the juggler walking the floor at WA and APAP, and it's kind of hilarious since you happen to mention jugglers.
Baskets, who could have been?
Who could have been? Smaller version of APAP, They do a few of them. There's Western Arts Alliance, which is on the West Coast on top of Labor Day. You also have Max, which is the bigger of the two, and it's in the middle of the country. And that used to be Arts Midwest, and PAE kind of came together and formed this. But that seems to be the middle of the country and seems to really be hip, but it's very arts driven, middle of the country. So think between small theater, big Broadway, and anything that you would put on a subscription series, whether it be jazz or bluegrass or any kind of venue in America that's trying to program the arts for the middle of the country. They show up here and they meet with everybody. This is their chance. But Max is really kind of blowing up. It's on the move, and Wah, I think, is kind of on its way out, is kind of the vibe I'm getting from the agents.
That's kind of the report that I got as well, too. A lot of people impressed with Max this year, and that's really busy for agents that are like looking at all the regionals that kind of play out from early summer through AIBA. I laid eyes on a few agents that are just like, I'm exhausted at the end of basically 4 out of 6 weeks are straight conferences, kicking things off in August. It's a lot of travel. It's a lot of time, spent pitching for sure. It's a lot of time not actually doing a whole phenomenal bit of work too. So I feel like there's definitely an overload that happens with the agents around late August, September, October. Throwing Americana Fest in the middle of this, which we haven't even talked about, is there's a ton to be done during this time frame, and a lot of people out of the office traveling to all these things. But Max seems like it went off, great this year. Haven't really heard much from the walk crowd in the last couple of years.
Now, on the other side, the Independent Venue Association does their big conference now, NEVA. This year it'll be in Minnesota, June 7 to 10, 2026. Last year it was in Milwaukee. It just seems to get bigger and bigger. But this is really where all the indies come together and have their powwow. And you're talking bars, you're talking indie promoters, you're talking some of the coolest people in the business coming together. And it's kind of overtaken what some of the South by Southwest cool bar hang used to be. A lot of those people don't go to that anymore. They go to NEVA, and NEVA was created during COVID, so it wasn't even a thing before COVID. And now they're a very big trade organization, and they got a really cool thing happening. And that seems to be really on the rise. It kind of was, I think, part of what FlyCon used to be when Ticketfly was together, kind of what South by South kind of used to be, and a little all of that. And NEVA came together and has pulled all the cool into one room, all the indies in one place at one time. They just keep impressing me, NEVA, on the way up.
It's been difficult for me to get to NEVA. I've been to a couple of them now. It always falls during the CMA Fest week as well, which is a big week for country music in Nashville. Fallen same week last couple of years, where it's the first half of that week. That in and of itself, CMA Fest week has bled over and become a 6-day affair these days. So, but the one that I went to last year in New Orleans was phenomenal. The program was great. The hang was great. I heard nothing but good things about this year's conference. I think it'll be particularly special for NEVA to go to Minneapolis next year up in Minnesota, given its connection to Dana Frank and the First Avenue family that really staked the whole thing, really. We've talked at length on this podcast and everywhere else about how important Dana Frank and her family of venues were to initially starting that organization. So to bring it home for Dana at the very least, I think will be a really special thing. Plus, Minneapolis is just a great city filled with awesome venues. There's going to have no shortage of good food, good hangs, and good people at NEVA 2026.
A little bit of love for NEVA. Check it out if you're an indie and you really want to get a taste of what's going on that side of the business. Highly recommend. Also, I would recommend what I call grad school. If South by Southwest is high school and Polestar and AIBA are college, Aspen Live is grad school. It is the last conference of the year, and it is a little more expensive than most, a little higher end, and I would compare it more of the festivals to Bottle Rock, where it's good food, it's very well programmed, and it's all about the vibe, right? So in the morning, they have no programming, so everybody can go skiing if they want, and then the first session is until 4 in the afternoon. Some high-end sessions. Then 7 o'clock at night is dinner. Then drinks until as late as you want to be up. And then back in the slopes first thing in the morning. Everybody tends to meet for breakfast in the lobby at the Limelight. And then everybody disperses to the mountains or to cooking class or ski mobiling. And what a great way to expense a holiday vacation. I love Aspen Live. It's got a special place in my heart. And the Aspen Live family has just been outstanding.
Yeah, I can't thank you and Jim Louie enough for inviting me to Aspen Live 7 or 8 years ago. I forget how many it's been for me now, but it feels like a reunion of family every time that we go there together. Some of the programming and some of the conversations that have been taking place at Aspen Live are some of the more informative ones. I tend to go to Aspen Live desperately, desperately tired from a brutal fourth quarter every year, but I leave every year inspired with some new knowledge and ready to go into the break with a bunch of new ideas and renewed connections every year. So I just think it's one of the best in the business when it comes down to the network of people that go to that, the programming that's there, and the kind of atmosphere that Jim has created over the last 29 Aspen Lives, which is crazy.
So December 3rd is the Wednesday night. It unofficially starts with Peter Temkin's barbecue at like 7 at night, Wednesday night. Officially, it starts Thursday afternoon, December 4th, and runs through Sunday afternoon. People tend to take off first thing Sunday morning. Aspen is more expensive, but I've never not paid for Aspen Live based on the business I pulled out of that room. Dollar for dollar, one of the best hangs and just a great time. Viva la Andy Summer for bringing me into the Aspen Live family.
I was talking with Sarah Mertz during AIBA of Tixer, and she was there with Patrick, who was one of the executives at Tixer, and they were talking about the number of Tixer people going to Aspen Live this year. And she had a line that I think Louis should put on the website, which was something like, Aspen Live has helped me in so many material ways in my career, I just couldn't tell you how. And I feel so much about that, that there's something about the attitude of people that are there, the network of people that are there. It's hard for me to pinpoint, I got this thing done at Aspen Live, but when I look at peers and people surrounding me and who I do business with, it comes a lot from that conference. So
the ability to call anyone on Sunday afternoon that you met at Aspen Live, not only will they take your call, but they'll get you an answer or find you a resource in real time on a weekend or late night. If you're in trouble and you need someone and you call, the Aspen Live crew, if they met you in Aspen, they'll pick up the call. And there's some pretty impressive people on that list. Moving into the venue conferences, and there are a bunch of them, but the two biggest, and they happen like 2 weeks apart, actually. Venues Now was in Las Vegas this past September. I'm not sure that they've announced. I couldn't find it where they're holding it, but it's also owned by Oakview Group, and they usually have their conference attached to one of the new venues that they're rolling out. And they've done some pretty impressive ones with their Austin Moody venue, Seattle Climate Pledge. They're always opening something, and they've done some really impressive things. Now, a couple weeks earlier, August 9 to 12, 2026, in Indy this year, you're going to have IAVM's Venue Connect. So the venue guys either make a choice or they go to both. I'm not sure how that works, but these are two very heavily focused on the venue managers, arenas, stadiums, racetracks, what have you. But the highest end venue managers from the theaters to the stadiums all come out for both of these conferences, and they're really well programmed, and it's very, very venue focused. And if you don't particularly do shows outside of your one market where you can run around to all the venues, but you do shows on a more grand scale with a bigger map, it's a great way to connect with a lot of people very fast in that venue world.
Yeah, no doubt. It's been probably 10 years since I've been to either of these conferences. Definitely more on the venue, definitely more on the promoter side of things. A lot of, things that are covered that are day in, day out stuff that I take for granted, from venue safety to insurance to F&B to parking to all those things that go into making a successful concert or a successful tour, that are all really behind the scenes. A wealth of knowledge that candidly I just never have tapped into, but great events, and if you're a venue person, definitely worth checking out one of these two.
Before we finish this up, and I know we've been going on for a while, but I think this is a great resource that we're giving you on the whole conference fronts, and there's so many of them, so hopefully it helps you pick. AIBA also does a free mixer 3 times a year in each city: LA, New York, and Nashville. You don't even have to go to the conferences to attend. You do have to RSVP, but it's free drinks. It's like 3 hours of open bar. The venue guys come from all over the country, lots of agents, lots of promoters, lots of managers. It's a great schmooze. And I try to book my LA, my New York, and my Nashville trips around these events. And I usually can hit 2 out of 3 in any given year, but really worthwhile. And it's just a free service that AIBA does to help create that community and bring everybody together. They pay for the drinks, they pay for the hall, They bring us all together, and there's not as much as a pitch when you're in the room for that, which is quite an amazing thing. I think we did skip over ILMC, so before we jump, it's the Polestar of Europe, and it is possibly, if we're continuing to compare to festivals, let's call it the Glastonbury because it's in Europe and it's been around forever. This year is year 38, and you have all of the international guys outside of the US and Canada all come to this conference, and it is amazing to learn how different their business is from ours in America, from the ticketing to the marketing. And these people literally have to deal with routing tours around the front line of a war, or having to deal with a political climate that affects what your pop star can wear on stage or even say, and possibly in some cases, lyrics having to be changed and how you handle that. Great resource on the highest level for doing shows globally. ILMC, hats off to our friends over there at IQ Magazine that put that conference on. They do an outstanding job.
No doubt. ILMC definitely, it's not the only game in town when it comes down to European concert promotion or live events, conferences, but it is certainly the king and the highest gemstone that's over there in that portfolio of things that happen. There's IFF that happens in the fall, which is mostly festival programmers, but this, I feel like you get a real representation of a global business.
And that's also put on by the same folks that do LMC, so
yeah.
It's a good companion piece, but heavily festival flavored for Europe.
It's sort of like close to like what AIBA is doing over here in the States in terms of time of year or what they're looking at for programming, those sorts of opportunities when it comes down to like its time and place in the calendar. But ILMC certainly gets, a really globally represented business. It's not Europe. It's not just Europe, I should say. Although a bulk of the attendees are from Europe or UK, you've got promoters from the US and agents from the US coming over to try to export some things as well too. So phenomenal hang. Got a lot of great memories and stories and people that I've met over the years through ILMC, and it's definitely worth something to go in and check out.
Should mention that the best conference that used to happen in New York was Billboard, and Ray Waddell had built something amazing. Dave Brooks had taken it over when he came in, and Ray moved over to Polestar.
They still do the Billboard Music Summit, I believe it's called, which is now in November in LA. And it's down to one day. Typically, they wrap it around a large big name honoree and stack things across that. There is some programming throughout the day, but it's reduced down to one day.
Billboard Live Music Summit, November 3rd, 2025. It is at the One Hotel West Hollywood. Dave Brooks at it again. I'd love to see him take that back to New York where it shined so many years ago. But Dave Brooks does great things, and we love him.
I think that covers it, Dan.
So I think that was pretty thorough. I think we did
I think as far as live entertainment conferences go, I think that's the gamut here. Of course, there's a whole other side of this thing on the records and pub side of things. There's plenty of other things worth talking about, but we can say that for another podcast, Dan.
This was live touring, and I think we fucking nailed it, Luke.
I think we nailed it.
It's pretty obvious they never really grew up. They only learned how to act in public. Steiny and Luke in the morning on Promoter 101.
The quote of the month: success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success. If you love what you're doing, you will be successful. Albert Schweitzer credit with that, Luke. Albert Schweitzer.
I don't know Albert Schweitzer, but he sounds like a wise man, Dan. It's a good quote of the month.
There you go.
Your excuse to turn up the volume and drown out Karen from accounting. Steiny and Luke in the morning on Promoter 101.
Thank you to everybody who tuned in to this 236th episode of Promoter 101. We appreciate so much of you listening, giving us feedback. We always love hearing from you. If you've got something you want to say, drop us a line. You can hit us at Steiny@promoter101.net. We'd love to hear from you.
Normally, we come to you on the last Thursday of the month, but because of Thanksgiving, we're going to put it up 2 days early. November 25th, we'll be back with an all-new podcast.
Our November episode will feature the Wassermans' Kevin Shivers.
That was really a great interview. I feel like you really did your homework on that one and really made that a special interview.
I'm excited for everybody to hear it. Tune in November 25th, Kevin Shivers. In the meantime, we're wishing you sold-out shows for the month to come.
Cheers.
Call your mother.
cafe called Promoter 101.